Hi, podcast listeners. This is your host, Jenna Pecor, and I'm so excited to bring you our episode for today. If you are a first-time listener or a listener who has been with me since day one and you love what I'm doing, I want to encourage you to support the podcast by giving a small donation. I love bringing you new faces and interviews, but it does take time and resources to do it. And any support you'd be willing to give goes towards website upkeep, travel, time, and costs, and would help me greatly to keep doing what I'm doing. Give your support by going to paypal.me/Faces of Grand Prairie. Today I'm talking with Bonnie Cockrum, a longtime volunteer and president-elect of the Grand Prairie Historical Organization. Recorded at the new GPHO Museum, we talk about the recently renovated building and the goals of the organization. Bonnie tells us about the importance of digitizing documents and how they set up their digitizing room, as well as the ongoing effort to always fill the gaps in history with firsthand accounts of stories from citizens. As a history buff myself, I found this interview incredibly informative and discovered a newfound respect for the history of our town, and I hope you will too. And now, here is Bonnie Cockrum. Good morning. I am here today at the Grand Prairie Historical Organization Museum, and I'm here with Bonnie Cockrum, who is the president-elect in charge of membership.
Yes.
Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm so happy to be here because the last time that I was in this building, y'all hadn't redone it yet. And it has been completely renovated on the inside. And you gave me a tour, and I am just in awe. It's just really so beautiful in here. Y'all did such a great job.
Well, thank you. The city was responsible for the restoration and getting the building back to its original outdoor look. All of the outside as it was when it was built in 51, but the inside is museum quality. We
Yes.
did take down a couple of walls.
Yes.
We have windows and shades that filter out the UV lights and the rays, and we have display cases now.
Yes, yes.
We are official.
Yes.
We're so proud. It's really a great feeling to walk in here.
Oh, yes, it is. It's beautiful. And it's, I don't know how many of the listeners came when it was the building before, but it looks, I can't express how different it looks and how amazing it looks. But y'all have display cases. There's a map, catalog file, like an official catalog file. And then y'all have, we're going to talk about all this, but y'all have a digitizing room. You have an archives storage space. You have a meeting area where you have presentations and you can have people come with tables and chairs. So I guess talk to me about, first of all, how long have you served with the historical organization? Because I should say this, President John Wiley was supposed to be here today. He was not feeling well, and he was busy, so we appreciate his interest in at least coming, but he wasn't able to come. So you're the Lone Ranger.
Okay. Well, and let me tell you just a couple of things about John. John and I met the first time at church and then genealogy, and he's been doing genealogy for many years, and when you do genealogy, you're searching into history. So
Right.
he enjoys history. And so he has been in Grand Prairie for around 22 years. And when he joined the historical organization, I'm sure, I know that people have said when they found out that he didn't grow up here or hadn't lived here long, why? And because if he lives here, this is what he says, he needs to know more about the city and how it became what it is. It's kind of like doing genealogy. We are who we are because of our ancestors and things they did.
Right.
So you don't think about that. But anyway, so John took the position of president-elect, and this year he is the president.
Wow.
And we appreciate it because he has a lot of knowledge about technology, and we appreciate that a lot. So I actually was a member way back in the 70s, in the late 70s.
Wow.
The organization that I was in was very small at the time. Ruthie had just gotten it started. But we did the first home tour of Dr. Copeland's home right after the city bought it from Dr. Copeland's grandson and set it up as a historical home. And so that was a really important thing for me to be involved in because I knew Dr. Copeland personally, went to church with him. And so there was nothing in the home.
Wow.
Literally, there were almost no things. So some of us began to put a few things in there just so we could have a home tour.
Right.
A lot of empty rooms, but a few things.
Right.
So that was my beginning of the historical organization. We met in the daytime. Well, as a working person, right after that, I couldn't attend meetings, so I didn't rejoin, and I put it aside. And one day I thought, why am I not a member of the historical organization? And so I rejoined and pretty quickly got on the board. But that hasn't been too many years ago, really, about 6 or 7.
Oh.
So it has been a long time. I got busy with life and a lot of other things, but I never lost my love for keeping up with the history and continually driving around town to see what the changes were.
Well, because this is not your only organization to be involved in.
No.
You're on the board of a couple. You know, I know you have a lot to do with the Grand Prairie High School Alumni Association, and then of course I see you in women's club meetings and all this stuff. So it's like, it's volunteering can become a job in and of itself. So. But you getting back into this particular organization, you and I have known each other for a while. I know that this is something that's very near and dear to your heart that you find very important. So what was the reason you really felt it important to be a part of this one in particular?
I think mainly as I drive around town, which I do going various places, I see changes that I'm not always happy with. I love all the new stuff. There's a lot of historical areas of Grand Prairie that are neglected. I don't think it's a fault of anyone in particular. I just think that we haven't been as attentive to it. I think for me, having grown up here all of my life, I remember things that used to be on a corner or used to be in this building, and they're no longer there, or the building is totally gone,
right,
or the home is totally gone. I think that that's probably what made me get back into it. I am busy, but I think if you have a passion, you're never too busy to follow that passion.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't mean you have to give up doing other things.
Right, right.
So that's what brought me back, was the changes I saw in things disappearing. And I just wanted to see if there was anything I could contribute to the group. And I didn't really know what direction they were going at that time. It had been a long time since I had been involved. And so when I got back into coming to meetings, and I knew a lot of the people, I realized that we all, have our memories, and we want to share those memories.
Right.
And all of us have fond memories.
Right.
Whether you started out here as a baby or didn't come till you were a teenager. But those are the important things I think that the historical organization is envisioning capturing very soon.
Right.
We've been talking about it. One thing I like to say is that we all grow up hearing stories, and we didn't have the capability of capturing those stories and hearing those voices. And with Ruthie Jackson starting the videotaping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, that was a wonderful thing to be able to see people that I knew as a young child. They were certainly not my peers, but I got to hear their stories of long before I knew them.
Absolutely.
And what they contributed to Grand Prairie.
Yes, you and I were talking about this before. It's one of the reasons the technology that we have available at our fingertips can both be a good thing and a bad thing. In this particular case, it's a good thing because it helps us preserve things in ways that we couldn't before. And just like what you're saying, you and I have very similar desires to get people's voices and images on a way for other people to listen. And we were talking about the Kip's Big Boy, and I was saying it's great to put comments on Facebook. It's great to add that stuff, but I want to hear what you have to say in your own voice, with your enthusiasm, with your tonality, with your passion, with the story, because there's just something different about that. And it's important to get that out there and let other people hear, you know?
The fun thing is that if you have a group of 5 people who were at an event, they all have different memories. Something impressed one that might not have impressed the others. We all absorb things differently. That's the importance of hearing these stories, because everybody has a little bit different view and a memory. So,
well, think about the assassination of John F. Kennedy. You know, I mean, you think about, you have all those people. Everybody sees something different, and so, but it's the same thing with anything else. And it's the restaurants. It's going to eat. Everybody has different. They went with different people. They experienced different, things while they were there. So I agree, it's very, very important. And you guys are starting to use technology to your advantage, because now you're starting to videotape a lot more. So talk a little bit about that, and maybe we could talk about digitizing some of the documents.
The videoing is kind of new. One thing we wanted to do was try to videotape our members and some of the citizens in Grand Prairie that have been here a very long time, our mature citizens. And the purpose is to capture the memories, but it's also to see who that person is and hear their voice. And the memories are really important because they lived them, they created them. And so that's a big thing. The videoing of our meetings has just begun, and that's important too, because we can put those up where members who can't get to the meetings will still be able to see them. We can send a link via email to our members. We might put them on a website. We can't leave them there forever, but it would be a chance for people to see what our meetings are about and who our speaker is, and the memories and history they're sharing of their topic. The digitizing is the most important part. And I'll go back, because the digitizing actually started with the Genealogical Society. Grand Prairie Genealogical Society had the opportunity to learn about a preservation capture system, is what it was called. We call it PCS just to make it easier to say. I went to a seminar in Dallas that was done by the LDS Church. And this is a big thing with genealogy, is to preserve the records and make sure that you can share them with your family or others, whether you're doing it through a genealogical society or just private individuals, is to get everything digitized. Another important thing is in case there's a fire. People who do genealogy and they're searching courthouses for records often find that a courthouse burned in a time period where records were totally lost. And that's always sad.
Very much, yes.
What the historical organization wants to do is to capture all of the faces and the events and the activities of Grand Prairie people and businesses, so that we can share them here in the museum. We can print things and make a display, or we can put them on a screen for people to view. People will be able to search for a topic. It takes time. There are a few of us working on this, a handful. We need more. It's always good to have more members that can share their expertise. A lot of our members didn't grow up in the computer age, and they may use a computer for emailing, but they don't use it for a lot of other things. And many of them don't, they just don't know how to save all their pictures properly. And so we can digitize records, we can digitize photos. The preservation capture system is set up in our tech room. John Wiley, in fact, has been I'll call him a stem winder. That was always Ruthie's favorite term for people
Stem
who
winder,
did
what
things.
is that?
It's someone who's always getting things done. If you think of winding a clock, you've got to keep that watch or that clock round.
I like that term.
So a stem winder is someone who is, getting things rolling, keeping it going. And so with John Wiley, knowing a lot about genealogy, being on the state board, he's been a genealogist for years, has done it as a profession.
Wow.
He, not being here today, asked me to, just kind of bring up a couple of things. So I'm just going to look at a note here, if you'll
Sure.
forgive me. But I do want to give him the credit, and as well as Lynn Shoemaker from the genealogy group, which I'm in with them. The first preservation capture system was sort of a homemade model with the 2x4s and the stand and the setup. But they perfected the size and got a professional to come in and literally make the forms that would move and slide and adjust the camera and the professional quality lighting that we have.
Yes.
And so we're able to not touch the camera, simply click a button on a handheld piece of equipment, and the camera can be adjusted in height just by moving the armature. We can do maps. We can't go much bigger than a 4-foot area.
Right.
We can do it in pieces and stitch it together, but we can also do a lot of different sizes of scrapbooks and photographs and just memorabilia.
Yep.
People have brought boxes of things that we've captured, and the great thing about it is now that we can get all these into themes, subject matter, person. By name, we can OCR, so if someone's going to search something, they'll be able to pull that up. As the historical organization, we have the room set up here. When this building was designed to be a museum, we wanted that room for technology. We wanted that room to be used for videoing, for capturing people as well as images. So we have a green screen. We hope to get the videoing of individuals set up in there soon, at least once a month to get started. Again, this takes people to do these things.
Yes.
People that not can just ask questions, but have the knowledge of using the technology to get it done.
Right.
So John Wiley has a lot of that knowledge, and we rely on him a great deal.
Let me interrupt. I'm going to interrupt you for a
Sure.
second, because I want the listeners to understand what this looks like. If you've ever taken a picture of a picture in your house, it is so hard to not have a shadow, to have it lay on a surface where it's being able to be, every single detail of that picture to be captured. It's very hard to do that on a cell phone. So this particular setup that you have has certain types of lighting on both sides. So there's two different, it kind of looks like on a canopy, but there's two lights on either side, and the camera moves up and down in the middle. And it's a digital camera that can be expanded or smaller depending on the size of the photo. Here's the thing. This is not, they take this and run it off on a photocopier. Digitizing documents, that's not what that is.
No.
Because if you've ever read a newspaper that was copied on a photocopier, there are words missing. You can't read all the way through. If someone didn't lay them down flat, there's a crease in the middle. So digitizing documents is a professional process for a reason, because you have to get every single part of that document into the detail. And when you have the right lighting and the right camera equipment, you can do that kind of stuff. The other thing too is, I want you at home as a project to go try to take a picture of a pamphlet. Just find a pamphlet in your house. Find something that has 10 pieces of paper on it. And I want you to take a picture of each one of those pages and see how long it takes you to get it correct. And understand how long it takes to digitize documents correctly. And when you have the right setup, it certainly makes it easier. But when there's only one person doing it, it can be a very painstaking process. So when she says she needs more people to help, That's the kind of stuff. It's very tedious, but it is so important. And it is so important to do it the correct way with the correct equipment, because that's how historical documents get done properly. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Yes. I'll tell you the tediousness of one thing that was so amazing. This was a project by one of our members, Larry Wheat, that he took on, and remembering that we have volunteers come in, and they're different volunteers, and so people just rotate. For instance, I would come in and whatever was ready to do, whether it was a file folder of documents or a scrapbook from some organization, that's what I would do that day. It was different every time. But we had a special area that was Larry's area, and he was digitizing the Deckman Diary. Now, Alexander McCrae Deckman, some of your
I did an episode on it.
Okay,
Yep.
They may or may not know. Bought the first plot of land, and his little town was named Deckman, and that's right down in the middle of Grand Prairie where that 239.5 acres was. This handwritten diary was yellowed, old, and crumbling. There were pieces loose. Now, granted, it was in pretty good shape considering the age, which was over 100 years. Roughly, I can't remember exact date it was written, but anyway, Larry took tweezers and moved little bits of paper back together. Now, we don't use Scotch tape, and we don't glue. We don't like Post-it notes, and we don't like ballpoint pens because they damage important documents. So when we digitize, if we have to make notes, it's with a pencil or it's on a sheet of paper that gets digitized along with the item. And so anyway, Larry painstakingly digitized every page, and some of the words had been distorted from age, faded a little. There were handwritten notes in the margin from a descendant, and so he worked on this a very long time.
Wow.
Thankfully, not all of our documents are like that. But then I say, I wish we had more documents like that.
Right.
Because that's what we're here for.
Right.
So now we have the Deckman Diary digitized that can be looked at and read so much more easily on a screen.
Right.
And it's preserved. And as I mentioned to you before we started and during the tour, the items that we digitize are all backed up on individual hard drives so that, it's not here.
Right.
So, we're keeping things in a safe place too, besides our archives room that's set up. But one of the first things that we did, our very first project really, was the Grand Prairie City tax rolls. Those are very interesting. You see where people lived that you knew. You see where you lived if you moved around. Unfortunately, there were a few of them missing, but we digitized from 1913 to 1978 with a gap here or there of some that might have been missing. These have now been uploaded to the portal to Texas History. So you can go and search a lot of Grand Prairie history on the portal to Texas History that's run by the North Texas, I always say NTSU, North Texas State University. That's how old I am. It's the University of North Texas in Denton. So these habits are hard to break. But anyway, that was one of the very first things we did, and I enjoyed doing those.
Yes.
They're quite large books, very heavy books, and we have to take the pins out and take the very thick, heavy covers off and get those pages loose and then put them back together.
You probably don't know this because if you weren't in some type of title industry, but every state has different requirements for when you go to buy a house. Certain states, when you go to buy a house, you have to have the full title history of that property. Texas is not a state that requires that. So I ended up doing, I worked for an oil and gas company for a while where we were doing gas, fields of gas pumps. If you were looking around, each one of those is on a piece of land. So you have to have the chain of the title. Well, we were doing it for Pennsylvania and places like that. Those are states where that's required. So you had oil and gas guys that were going in and finding stuff like the tax rolls and the documents and the handwritten things that weren't digitized, and they were digitizing them because it was a requirement for the purchase. I wish in Texas we did that, because those types of documents, very fascinating, tell a lot about history. Like one of the things I think on one of the deeds, I mean, it went back, and number one, they're all handwritten. None of them are typed. And when you go back as far as some of those do on that part of the country over on the Northeast, when you have some of the older history, there were slaves that were part of the deed. There was divorces of people that you wouldn't have even noticed. It really goes into a lot more detail than some of the ones that we do now. So tax rolls, I know they seem boring, but they're highly, highly informative about things that happen in a town. And so I wish that Texas had that, because I think we'd have a lot more digitized documents.
Maybe you can lobby for that.
I know, that would be a good idea.
Well, the tax rolls are very important. They really are, and by law they have to be kept by the city. And so, the city was not incorporated until 1909. So, the tax rolls probably weren't even begun. I mean, we don't have any that go back that far. So whenever at some point somebody said, oh yes, we're going to start charging taxes, I guess that's when they were started. But we started those, it's been almost 4 years ago, and when people found out that the Genealogical Society had started the digitizing process for a lot of records, we began to get scrapbooks from old civic organizations, and so we've done a lot of digitizing.
Wow.
It's been amazing. But the thing was, we only had one camera, and when the building was shut down, we thought, for restoration, we thought this will be a great time to digitize all of our records. They're going to be out of the building. We weren't putting them in storage with the furniture. We were not going to do that. So they got moved to the Turner Library, where we were digitizing, and GPHO bought a camera. We just bit the bullet and did it. And so we were able to digitize our own records.
There comes a time when everyone has to downsize. It can be really difficult to go through the items that you've collected over the years, and hiring a professional can seem so very helpful, and it absolutely is. That's where Prairie Pearls Estate Sales comes in. Prairie Pearls is a Grand Prairie-based estate sale company that knows our community and can help walk you through this transitional time of life. If you or someone you know is thinking about downsizing and think a professional would be a good option, which I highly suggest, give Nicole a shout by visiting her Facebook page at Prairie Pearls Estate Sales, or email her at grandprairiepearls@gmail.com.
As we went through a lot of our records, you rediscover things.
Yes.
I mean, you just kind of forget what's in there, and then you realize what you don't have.
Yes.
So much that has happened in Grand Prairie is not documented in our records.
Right.
And I keep thinking, oh, we need to find so-and-so, because they must have knowledge on this business or this home site or whatever. You mentioned the tax rolls being important for real estate. That's how you get a landmark, a city landmark marker on your home, is by proving the lineage of your house.
Right.
So you have to go back and research who owned that home before you. And
is this for any historical
any historical landmark?
Wow.
Yes, has to be 50 years old at least. And so that is one of, there's a form to fill out, and so those documents have to be shown. So people do need to research those records. So to me, the state of Texas needs to come up in the world just a little in that area, but that's just my personal opinion, and probably yours.
So how many landmarks do we have in Grand Prairie?
The numbers don't run consecutively, and that's another story, but I think there's somewhere around 50.
Okay.
They're all listed on the city website. There's probably a little more than 50 now that I think, because there were a number skipped. we have numbers available. I'd say about 55 perhaps. And so we would love for people to contact us for the papers to research their home and what's required to get a landmark. There are, of course, more landmarks up near downtown area because the streets right around there have the older homes. But there are lots of areas of town. One area of town that I'm interested in is just a 2-block area of Carrier Parkway. This is just me personally in getting some sort of a landmark or recognition for that 2-block area. Those homes were built in 1953 and
Which
54.
Part of Carrier?
It runs between Burleson and Hill Street. That 2 blocks was where my family built a new home, a mid-century modern home. They now have a name for those houses. There's only one original homeowner there, and that is sad. We've lost several of the people. My family moved off of Carrier several years ago, but that 2-block area dead-ended at Hill and dead-ended at Burleson.
Wow.
So Carrier Parkway, when I moved on to Carrier, was 2 blocks long. And I think those homes deserve some recognition right there because they were built by one of our Grand Prairie builders, and there's just some historical significance. So that's another area, that I'd like for some of our listeners to think about is, where do you live? When was that neighborhood established? What is that neighborhood's name? Do you know, I didn't know that my neighborhood right there had a name until I began to do the tax rolls.
Oh, yes.
And so then you see where that neighborhood goes on up Hill Street. And so if you're in the old Fairview area that was annexed into the city in later years or other areas, you might think about, some designations, and that's who we need to talk to, people that are still living there that can give us some history. There's so much to do. My mind can go in 50 different directions at once, but I need 50 different people to pull in to help.
So you don't have to be designated a historical organization to attempt to get something marked as a landmark, historical landmark. Do you have to be designated?
There has to be someone in charge of the landmark medallions.
Okay.
In the past years, the city had established a historical commission, and that had been disbanded several years ago. So we are now the recipients of the markers that are left, and we are the ones to take the applications.
So there was a historical commission at one point in time.
There was a commission,
Wow,
yes.
Wow. Okay, so you mentioned another thing, too, that I wanted you to kind of touch on was, what is the difference between a genealogical society and a historical organization?
Great question. And let me just quickly mention that when the Grand Prairie Genealogical Society was formed, it was also the Grand Prairie Genealogical and Historical Society, and that was in 1967. I was the outgoing president and planned the 50th reunion or celebration for the Genealogical Society, and so I began putting some research to use and discovered the records for that. And the handful of people that started that group in 1967, and they do run very closely together. I think after just about 5 or 6 years, decided that there was really a whole lot of difference and they needed to be separated. And so they dropped the historical aspect of it and just became fully genealogical. However, the name did not change. Their 501c3 remained that full title. Well, Ruthie Jackson wanted to get the historical organization active, and the documentation on that was a little out of our fingertips, and so we're still looking for actual paperwork, but we are a 501c3, and our historical organization was established in 1975. And so the difference between the two is not a lot, and I had made a note about that, probably won't be able to find it. A society is a group of people with like-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
But to be a historical organization or an organization, you nearly always are going to have a legal documentation, like a 501c3
Mm-hmm.
or some sort
Right.
of legal paperwork.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
the short
Right.
answer.
So, but the genealogical side of things is this. Is it the history of people, like the all the different lineages?
It's not even so much the history, although that is a huge interest. It's proving your ancestors
Okay.
belong to you, and in order to do that, you always start with yourself and work backward.
Right.
So you are looking for birth certificates, death certificates. Often you want to know where they lived,
Mm-hmm.
of course. So you're looking at land records or tax rolls and different things. You don't have to do all that. You really need to document your lineage, the birth line, the birth, backwards. But there's very few people that I know of that when they search for their ancestry, they don't want to know more about who the people actually were
Right.
and
Right.
what they did. And that's what we do for
Right.
the historical organization. We don't care so much about your family lineage, although we would love to know
Mm-hmm.
that in some documentation. We want to know your grandfather settled here in 1910, let's say, hypothetically. What did he do?
Right.
What was his job? Did
Right.
he farm? Was he a blacksmith? Did he work for the little car company?
Right.
Did he work for the broom factory? Did he become a civic-minded person and run for city council?
Yes.
The fun thing about going back through old newspapers is you can, read about people who are doing things.
Absolutely.
But my family wasn't here before the war,
Right.
and so, they didn't work at North American. They didn't start here, in the early part of the century.
Mm-hmm.
And so when my parents moved here, my father worked at Temco. It had changed from North American to Temco. And then Vought came along,
Mm-hmm.
and they were
Mm-hmm.
separate but similar. And so, I have that history of my father, and that even though Grand Prairie annexed that land, LTV,
Mm-hmm.
that name incorporates everything from the beginning, North
Yes.
American.
Yes.
That company has so much historical background for Grand Prairie residents,
Yes. Absolutely.
and it built Grand Prairie.
Yes.
It brought people to Grand Prairie, and it made Grand Prairie grow by leaps and bounds. Just because it sits on property that is owned by Dallas County, it is right there bordering Grand Prairie, and Grand Prairie businesses were all around it.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so people bought homes in Grand Prairie, they had children in Grand Prairie, they went to school in Grand Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
They are Grand Prairie people. And that's an area that we always love to find out more about too.
Yes. Well, and one of the things I wanted to mention, and we had kind of talked about, but when you go to a museum and you look at items, those items have to come from somewhere. It's not like if you were to go to the Dallas Museum, they have rooms and rooms and rooms of things. It's not like they went and dug up all those things out of the ground and then they found them and then they belonged to them and then they displayed them. Those things had to come from somewhere. Either they were donated or they're on loan or something. And so, like, for example, right now I think they have, one of the fashion designers has the history of his dresses. He has a lot of his dresses on loan to the museum, and it's a special exhibit those things don't stay there, but they're on loan for people to see. But a lot of the things people have donated to the museum. This museum, the Grand Prairie Museum, works exactly the same way. You have things here that are displayed. And me, personally, I have donated things not from my family, but I own an estate sale company. I've done estate sales. When I come across anything that is historical significance to Grand Prairie, when I see it, it goes to y'all. So y'all have a Grand Prairie drill team outfit that I'd found. I don't know from when it was. I want to say it was the 60s or 70s, I think, that we figured that out. I found Marvin Bell's History of Grand Prairie. It was one of the original typed up transcripts with the photos glued into the picture. I didn't know what it was. I had no clue. Didn't even know who Marvin Bell was. My parents knew. I mean, as I started talking about that document, people were like, oh yeah, Marvin Bell, Then I found out that his daughter had typed up a bunch of those made, because he had a bunch of copies made, because it was for a dissertation for his doctorate or master's degree. But anyway, I didn't know what it was, but I was like, I know that this is important because it looks important. And I said, hey, do you guys want this? So my point is, these things, in order to have a museum, you have to have people that give you the stuff to put in it. And the beauty of having it in a place like this and not in your attic is that people can actually see it. And me being in the estate sale industry, I know it's hard for people to give up stuff sometimes. But if you want to have a museum, you have to have ways to get that stuff out. So my encouragement, and I want to ask Bonnie your opinion, is I want to encourage people to give up the stuff that might mean something, but that could mean something bigger. So, like, we're going into spring cleaning. How do y'all get stuff? Where can people bring you the stuff? How do you keep it? That kind of thing.
Well, I hound a lot of people. My ear is always attuned to conversations. Because I'm out and around doing things, and I know people that have lived here. And I do know that a lot of their parents, are downsizing. Some are moving into retirement centers. And so boxes of things go to a child or a grandchild, and unfortunately they end up in an attic or a garage. We have an archives room here that is its own climate-controlled room, and the archival boxes and the archival folders, the items that we store in are archival quality. And so I hope that is an incentive right there. Mm-hmm. And I do know, I'm not ready to get rid of my things yet. I'm still showing off my things. I still have high school stuff and things that my parents had. And, I will at some point, what my son might not want. But I think it's important for people to know that if you've ever been in a museum, you know that they're not going to put things in there that are not important. Mm-hmm. Everything we take must be related to Grand Prairie.
Right.
I was going through a bunch of things the other day and found an old Arlington map. And I'm thinking, I don't need this.
Yes, yeah.
I looked at it. I enjoyed the old advertisements in it.
Right.
But I didn't need it. And so maybe some of the listeners have been looking around their home, or they open a drawer and they might find anything, and they're not sure what to do with it. They don't know if it's important. My suggestion is to get a box, put those kind of papers in it, photos. If you don't know who the people are in the photos, really, you don't know who they are, that's probably not a photo you need to keep.
But that's a good point.
And so if it's in front of a business that was in Grand Prairie, however, mm-hmm. or at your school, or with a group of people at church, and you think you might recognize a face, that's a research project for somebody in the historical organization. Or hopefully the person who has it will do that for us before they give it to us. Mm-hmm. Identify photos. You may have a document that doesn't seem valuable, but it could mean something in the history of Grand Prairie. So I would just recommend that you put stuff in boxes, but don't let it sit in the garage or the attic. Bring it up here and let us look at it.
Yes.
If you're not ready to get rid of it, we'll digitize it, and you can take that box back home. But we'll have the records of, whatever it is around Grand Prairie that you may have been involved in, various civic organizations or school things. It's fun to go through other people's things.
It certainly really can be. It is. Yes, and here's the other thing that I will say, and this is my own personal opinion, because I see it because of what I did for a living. When I get a hold of something that I know is very valuable, like the Marvinvale transcript or a really cool drill team, because I posted a picture of that and on my Facebook page, and I said, what year was this? Does anybody recognize this as a year? And I knew with the amount of comments I got that it was something really cool to have. But I know that it can be really tempting to keep the things that we think are really cool to have, and to tell people that we have them. However, I, as Jenna Pecor, can only tell so many people about this one item that I have. You, as the historical organization, can share it with a variety of people that might never have got to see it if I'd have kept it myself. And so I think that we can become very attached to possessions, and we can become very, it can be really easy to want to keep them to ourselves and to be the one that has the pride of having them. But I knew I could not forgive myself if, for example, if I had that Marvinvale transcript and I spilled coffee on it, or if I had that thing just to keep it and my daughter ripped it up when she was 2 years old, or whatever the case may be. So as much as I loved having it, it made me uncomfortable keeping it, because then I was like, now I'm responsible for a very important piece of history. Mm-hmm. And to give it to y'all where it could be well taken care of, that's your job. I just want to encourage people out there, don't covet the stuff. Give the stuff to where it could be useful. If you want to do it as a loan, that's fine. But at least let somebody know you have it. And let's make sure that, that it doesn't get ruined and it doesn't get destroyed. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And so, I don't know, that was just my own public service announcement.
Thank you. And we have a form that we fill out. We do have temporary loan items. We may want to ask people to bring in anything that would relate to a subject that we might want to put on display for a month, and that would be a temporary loan. At the end of the month, they would come pick up their item. But we have a form that we fill out. We sign it, they sign it. It's a description of what the item is. And so, there are permanent things that will be given to us that, those people will never get back. Those are the things that are important to, as you said, a number of people that walk in this museum to look around. And we can't display everything all at once. So our displays will change.
Right.
And right now, with Black History Month, we have pulled together things from our archives in the big display case that we have, and they're featured in there. So we'll try to change that out then later and do something different. Grand Prairie History Month occurs in March, so we'll have a lot of different things in our archives that we pull out to feature Grand Prairie History Month. People can see when our museum hours are. Again, we are an all-volunteer group. There are no salaries. And we don't care. We don't want any. We don't do it for a salary. We do it because it's a passion. But you can look on the Facebook page, you can look on the website, find out what the hours are, and you can download membership blanks and become a member. That's my public service announcement.
Yes,
I would be remiss in my job as membership chair. I do push that a lot, no matter what job I'm in. I just, I want people to get in here and see what we have. We need to grow. We need more displays, and that's something we're working on. The way we do that is by membership support. Memberships are nominal. We have a variety of amounts, but the main thing is that we have people that have a passion about history. And I have something that I want to say, because people often say, you're old fuddy-duddies, you just want to live in the past. No, that is not true. I've always loved history, even when I was a little kid. I remember loving to do history projects in school, and I couldn't wait to do research and find out about whatever topic was assigned or what I chose. I wasn't a history nerd. That wasn't all I was
There's no
interested
such
in.
thing.
I don't think so. But the thing about it is, I think that loving history doesn't mean you want to live in the past. It doesn't mean you don't want to live in the here and now. And it doesn't mean that you don't plan for the future. The historical organization is planning for the future of Grand Prairie by preserving the history and the past of Grand Prairie. So what it means to me is learning how others lived and struggled, and you can appreciate what they went through in their lives at that time period. And it builds a fortitude in yourself. It builds an empathy, and it builds an appreciation.
So true. So true.
So what Alexander McCrae Deckman did was not significant to us in our lifetime right now, necessarily, but he did start something. We all need to start something, whatever it means to us. He sold his wagon and his oxen. And do you know that he never even lived in Grand Prairie? He never built a home here.
That's very true. That's very true.
So it's just, it's interesting how he sold off plots of land to different people. And, he never lived here. But for some reason, he thought that was a good thing to do at the time. His family dispersed all over Texas. And we need someone to research his family.
Yes, I tried to kind of do that when I did a episode on him, and but the other, I will say this too, and it does going back in history does not mean we have to glorify or exaggerate what people did do, because A.M. Deckman didn't start out to make a huge wonderful town. That wasn't his intention when he did what he did. So there's no need to make it bigger than this is just what he did, right? And so history can just be telling the truth, telling the accurate facts, but a lot of times facts have to come from people that were there that can actually, because you'd mentioned, like, for example, we're right in the middle of February for Black History Month. The display that you have for Black history, you even said, this isn't anywhere close to what it should look like. But you can't put stuff up that you don't have. That's the problem. And you can ask people, but if people aren't willing to give you the stuff or talk about the stuff, and you talk about Mose Jordan, y'all put on the newsletter in February, you put a story about him. I just recently did a podcast about him. He was significant too. He owned 125 acres of land, and he was the first freed slave to live in this town. But there's a lot of things we don't know because there's a lot of things that weren't documented. So unless people talk about it and unless people tell you, it's really important. Yeah.
Oral history is very important.
Very important.
But it's kind of like the old game of gossip where
yes,
you whisper
absolutely.
something and over the decades it can change. And so it's better to have documentation. If people want their legacy to be known, they need to write it.
Right.
And we were so fortunate to be able to digitize the Deckman Diary. Wouldn't it be fantastic? I'm sure Mose Jordan never knew how to read or write. But wouldn't it be fantastic if he had told stories to someone who did?
Oh my gosh, it would have been amazing.
Wouldn't it have been a blessing?
Or at least wrote, I don't know, there might be a document out there where somebody wrote what his actual real last name was.
True.
I mean, we don't know. So that's, it's just, but it's hard. It's hard to go back and do that.
That's what we're here to do, is
right.
to try to document what we can.
Right.
We can speculate all day long about certain stories or certain events or, different things that we had no involvement in, that were so far back in the history. But there's a whole lot that we do have control of documenting and gathering the materials in order to do that. And, we just hope people will come and see us, see what's in here. We have a lot and we have nothing. There's so much we need. There's so many areas not covered.
Yes.
That people talk about every day.
Right.
That they remember.
Today's spotlight is on the big event in Grand Prairie. Patterned after similar events on university campuses, the big event is one day for citywide volunteerism. Celebrating unity in the community, Grand Prairie pairs volunteers who want to help others with residents who have a qualifying project. It will be held March 28th, 2020 from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. and starts at the South Grand Prairie High School parking lot. If you have a job or would like to volunteer or to be a sponsor, call Marcela Perez at 972-237-8191 or email bigevent@gptx.org. Or you can visit the city's website for more information.
I wanted to read one thing to you.
Sure.
We have a vision statement. It's on our website, and we have a process that we try to make that vision statement come about. One of the things is to search out, collect, catalog, I'm reading, properly preserve, and exhibit materials related to Grand Prairie. That was created before we had this building restored. So even before we knew we would have a museum, we still were trying to do what we're doing now.
Right.
Now we have a place to display. So we're continuing to grow, continuing to change. And we are trying to provide the leadership for that collection by doing the proper documentation. We as a small group of board members can't do all the work, and we need more members to assist. And I know we have members, and we have people out there who could become members that do enjoy researching and do know people that they could say, oh, you've got family history here. Let's get that out and go up to the museum and get it digitized.
Yes.
And if you decide you want to give it to them, fine. If not, we at least have those things that we can pull up to print, to put on a display.
Exactly.
The thing about also having the museum is not every city has a museum.
I was going to ask you, because I didn't know how many other cities do.
I wouldn't know. You hear about some. I happen to follow the Fannin County Museum because that's where my mother came from. It's located in Bonham, and that's where she was from. And they just do a remarkable amount of stuff. But they're a county museum. They're not a city. And their area is they're a little older than we are in establishment. But I think that the more people come in here and something sparks an interest, like the Black History Month, they're going to say, gosh, I know so-and-so. I bet he's got some history.
Yes.
That's what we need. We need the ideas and the stimulation and the contacts. We need people to help us with that. If you worked somewhere in Grand Prairie when you were a teenager, you may have memories of that establishment and the people you worked with. You may have a pay stub that would be fun for us to document.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes.
You may think things are not important, but they could be.
Absolutely.
We want to foster an appreciation. This is one of the things that we set out to do. But by enriching the public's understanding of the importance that the past has in the future.
Oh, I love that.
And being able to work with the Rho Kappa students at South Grand Prairie High School has been fun and a blessing because they've helped us with a couple of things at our Prairie Days. Those kids are interested in history. I do want to invite everybody to look at the website, look at the Facebook page, and they'll see the events coming up. Prairie Days is listed on there, and you can search through and see photos from the past Prairie Days, October of 2018 and 2017. We moved it to March this year. This is going to be an experiment, and we hope it works beautifully. Because Grand Prairie is March is the Grand Prairie History Month.
I did not even know that.
Yes, and it has been for many years. Used to have a parade, used to do a few more things, but we'll get there. We'll get back. Anyway, what we do on the grounds is to take people back to a time period of Grand Prairie's early times, early days. It's geared to kids. I will say it's geared to kids and families. There are sack races.
Oh.
There's not going to be any technology. Phones are put away. Some of the folks dress in costume. Not a lot, but some do.
Wow.
It's outside as well as inside. People can look at the museum. But we're going to have some games to play outside. There'll be a table where you can make a corn husk doll.
Oh.
And there'll be a few other things going on. It's just a fun time to think about what happened over 100 years ago, how people lived. It's not a classroom situation.
Yes.
It's fun.
Right.
And so we hope everybody will come. It's from 10 to 2 on Saturday, March 21st.
Okay. We're going to put that on the link so that people know where how they can come. Does it cost any money?
It's free.
It's free.
There's no admission to the museum ever even, but this is free admission. There's parking all around the building. We have a small parking lot, but there's a lot of space around the building. The games are free. It's not going to cost you anything. We will have a food truck out here. You know, that's
right.
We're not in charge of that.
Right.
But, anyway, it's a fun time. It's just come and go. You know, you can come and experience a sack race or pitch some horseshoes or do a little ring toss, and we're praying for good weather.
Yeah.
But you know, we do that all year long.
Well,
we never know.
Tell everybody the address of the museum.
The museum is located physically at 1516 West Main Street. That is just about 2 blocks to the west of the intersection of 161 and Main. It's the building that's been sitting here since 1951, and we're actually on a parkland. This is historic parkland.
Oh.
And so this was Dalworth Park, and it was all this community out here was established in 1909.
Yes.
So it has a history of its own, just the land.
Yes. You actually have a really neat photo album of this area that's in one of the display cases. And I was not allowed to touch it. You did open up the case and just showed me from the inside. And because the pictures are older in there, but it's just of this area, because right on the other side of this and right on the other side of the railroad tracks is where Dalworth is. And Dalworth is, matter of fact, Angela Luckey is coming on the 20th, February 20th, to talk about growing up in Dalworth.
I have that on my next note to tell you about our next meeting. Yes, and we're excited. It's going to be about her growing up in Dalworth, and so you know we've only had one other program that I can recall since I've been back as a member, and it was from Johnny McTwine, who is with the Alumni Association for Dalworth School. And so I learned an awful lot from him that was very interesting too. So I know Angela's going to share a lot of interesting things with us. And our meetings are free. And you can come as a guest. We do have a lunch, and you have to RSVP for that if you want to eat lunch. And you can do that online. You can go to the website. But you know, we're always happy to have guests come and visit our programs.
We need to do a meeting with all of the alumni associations, because I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about because now we don't just have South and Grand Prairie. Now we have Dubisky. Now we have all these, but I didn't even think about Dalworth.
Yeah.
That would be a really neat, you know, way to get a lot of people together. But wow, that'd be really cool. But I'm excited about that. I'm hoping to come to the meeting because I want to hear it. I want to hear about that, especially with it being Black History Month.
It's February 21st at 11:30. A meeting will start shortly after that. We'll serve lunch right away. It's just you know, buffet line.
Okay.
And so we usually start the meeting about 10 to 12, 5 to 12. We do them fairly short meetings. The program is about 30 minutes, and then we have a very short business meeting. But in the past, we've had a lot of working people that just can get away for lunch and come to a meeting and then go back to work. And so if that's a possibility for any of the listeners, you can try to make it. And
so it's Thursday the 20th, February 20th.
Yes.
And so
yes, I'm sorry. I think I said 21st.
No, and I actually posted this. I actually talked about it on another episode. And you do get, so you can RSVP to RSVP at Grand Prairie Historical.org.
Yes. You can come without lunch. I mean, you can just come and sit in for the meeting. We do have people that do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the $10 is just really to pay for the lunch. Okay.
Yes.
And then to join, obviously, when they come, they can join as members.
Of course, membership blanks available. I'll have a sandwich board. Now, if people don't know what sandwich boards are, then that's another historical object we need to teach them about.
So you mentioned Rho Kappa. What is that?
It's a social studies group that the kids, there are kids, the students have to apply to be a member of. Sarah Terrace is one of their sponsors, and they do community projects. They have cleaned up one of the cemeteries, the Antioch Live Cemetery. They've helped us here with our Prairie Days. And it's part of their requirement for community service, but they do have to apply to become a member of that. And she could certainly tell you more about how that goes, but they are a history group. And that is their primary purpose.
Is it based on one of the schools or
South Grand Prairie?
It's at South. Mm-hmm. Do they have one at Grand Prairie High School?
Not that I'm aware of, and I've been trying to find out.
Okay.
I've sent notes to some of the AP history teachers, so
that would be
like
amazing
to hear back from a history teacher from Grand Prairie High School.
Okay. Well, what an interesting organization to be a part of as a student. I think that's, because it does start an interest very early on with history,
I'm just going to give them a plug. You really need to visit with them and her. The 1917 end of World War I was commemorated up at the Veterans Event Center, and her students arranged and presented the program at the memorial and did a fantastic job.
Wow.
A fantastic job. Had a fantastic speaker. The band played from South. Each of the kids did some presentations and recitations. I mean, I was very impressed with the kids. Very impressed.
That's really neat. I'm going to reach out to them because, it's on my list of things to do. I think I'm going to be talking to some city council members about a historical commission again. I don't know if that would be helpful. Would it be helpful?
I don't know.
I don't know.
We can visit that and see.
It's just with a town of this size, it's, we just need to have more people. That's it. And, I think this is one of the reasons, and I said this on a different episode, is one of the reasons I started this podcast is that Grand Prairie is very long from distance to one side to the other. If you live on the south side and you don't ever come up here, you might not even know that we have a Grand Prairie Historical Organization museum. You don't know you haven't been to Main Street in a very long time, and vice versa. If you live on the north side, you might not go down to the south side very often. So it's really important that we keep remembering all the different parts of Grand Prairie, and everybody knows what's all here, and just kind of meeting the people that are making the stuff happen. Because
if you pay city taxes, you should know what's going on in your city.
Absolutely.
You should have some knowledge and see what's happening around town.
One thing that the city does, and I thought I'd mention this is a city-owned building. So this is not owned by the Grand Prairie Historical Organization.
Exactly.
You guys pay rent. How much is it?
It's $1 a year.
$1 a year. So this is not the only place that the city does own that gives this as kind of, and it's important that they do. They were the ones that were responsible for redoing the building, which is fantastic, because you could not have done it like this. This place, with some of these buildings on the north side of town, there was a lot of issues with asbestos. There was a lot of issues with all that stuff. Very expensive. It's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
Yes.
No. The city was very gracious, and we appreciate it. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it. It's
I think it's important to mention that because
Yeah.
it took a little bit of time. It wasn't just, oh, sure,
Right.
we'll go ahead and do it, you know.
It took a little bit of time.
It
yes,
did. It
yes,
did.
Yes, but they found us a place to meet during that time.
Yes.
We met at the library.
Yes.
And we only meet 4 times a year, but we have events in between. We just
Right.
had a fantastic quilt show. Fantastic quilt show.
Mm.
Almost 50 quilts loaned for
Wow.
the day. It was just unbelievable.
Wow.
And history of each that people filled out on their application, little bit of their how they got the quilt, whether
Right.
it was in their family or not.
Right.
So yeah, there's lots of things we do throughout the year.
Yeah. So if people want to find more information about the historical organization, where can they go? Where can they find you guys online?
It's GP Historical. No, we changed it. Grand Prairie Historical Organization.org. GrandPrairieHistorical.org. See, we just changed it.
But you do have a
It's been
Facebook
a
group.
long morning. We do have a Facebook group.
Mhm.
Yeah, the grant we have been a charitable organization forever, but our website was set up as a .com, and I said we really need to show people that we are a .org, that we
Mhm.
are a charitable organization,
Right.
and because our fundraising, that's very important for people to realize that
Yes.
we do fundraising, and it is for charity.
Right.
That we provide this service, to the citizens of Grand Prairie.
Right.
But yes, the Facebook page is the Grand Prairie Historical Organization.
Yep. And you guys are open. Y'all do have hours listed. It's
Mhm.
y'all aren't open a whole lot of time, but it is free. So if anybody feels like the hours are limited, you are more than welcome to come up and volunteer your time.
Bet, you bet. and you can work with some of us who are up here. What you would call shadowing. You're here, you listen to how we talk to people, how we explain the displays in between visitors. We can make sure you know about some of the displays, teach you a little bit about the history. People, it's kind of like people say, oh, I can't teach a Sunday school class. But once you study the lesson, you can teach it.
That's right, exactly.
So we'll help you study the lesson.
Yep. And history is one of those things where you kind of learn it by osmosis. It's
Yes.
funny how much I've learned just doing estate sales and then hearing people what they've said about it on Facebook. It's like you become an expert at it on certain things without even trying really all that hard. But I just want to encourage everybody, come up here and listen to some of the events. Listen to, come up and be a part of that. Come up to a meeting. Come up and be a part of the Historical Museum. Just walk around. Come up and see it.
Bring the kids.
Bring kids. Bring stuff. Bring things. Just even like their page on Facebook so that you can start to see what they're all about. And yes, kids need to see this too. They need to see all this. And there's things in here that kids would be fascinated to see. There's megaphones right over there of Grand Prairie High School from way back in the day. They could see that beautiful drill team outfit is on a mannequin. They get to see what that looks like, and they need to see all that stuff. Plus, it's just really cool.
And they'll get to see the only surviving sculpture of the GP out in front of our building, and they can learn about the history of that.
You just took that picture, and that does have some significance. And we're going to leave some mystery so that people can go back and look, because I think that they should, because they can find it on your page.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much, Bonnie, for spending time with me.
I can't thank you enough for allowing us to get our name out there and tell people about what we're doing.
Yes, well, you and I always have good conversations when we do, so.
Yes, we do.
You were definitely one on my list. I was like, yep, we have to go over there and do that. So,
Thank you, Jenna.
thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Uh-huh.